I didn't get to do this as early as I would have liked. Uh, Things came in the way, but we're getting to it. So before we proceed, let's make sure our audio is good, and then we'll be able to go. Excellent. So I'm going to read this news article, play some clips, and that will pretty much be today's wonderful, terrific, iconic, substantive stream. So let me go over here. I did notice that these candidates really like to put out policy proposals specifically on Monday. Like on Friday, if it's like Fridays are when Trump cabinet members get yanked, and then Mondays are when the presidential candidates put out plans or unveil plans or whatever. Because I know that Booker put out his immigration plan, I think 2 Mondays ago, the Monday before last Monday. It's a little pattern I've noticed. I find it really interesting. Not really, but it's just sort of entertaining. It's like they rented out today for their ideas. I do think you'll be more inclined to enjoy the segments I have after this, where I play some other clips and kind of explain how they're linked to what I'm saying. Let's see here. The Hill, the most reliable news source online. All right, buckle up. Former Vice President Joe Biden unveiled his 2020 White House. I don't know why they can't just say his campaign, whatever. Campaign's healthcare plan on Monday with the goal of protecting and building an Obamacare by adding a public option. Unlike several of his Democratic primary opponents, Jesus Christ, Ron Paul just started streaming. Man, it's like whatever. The second I start streaming, he starts streaming. So I can never show up to his thing live or whatever. Biden does not support eliminating private insurance or a Medicare for all plan. His plan is also not a pathway to a Medicare for all system, as other White House hopefuls have proposed. By the way, that pathway thing that a lot of them are talking about, that's a bunch of lip service to get you to think that they're progressive and vote for them so that when they get in the White House, they can act like you didn't exist and that they never said that. I only said a pathway. I never said you were going to get Medicare for all during my tenure. So that's all part of that same pyramid scheme thing of making like a half promise, and then when you get in there, pretending like it didn't happen. An example of this would be that in 2012, for Obama's reelection campaign, he pledged to get a public option put into Obamacare. It never happened. No attempts on his part. Nothing. Okay, Ruben says more Biden disasters. Also, I think Ron Paul always starts his live streams during this time. Oh, I think he does too. I'm just saying I don't usually stream at 9 Pacific Standard Time. It's usually like 6 or 7, 8, later on the day if it's a Saturday. So I'm saying that the one time I stream at 9 is one of the multiple occasions I can now think of where he's started streaming while I've been streaming. It sucks. I can always watch on the replay, but it's something about being there live and in person. It's so great. Um, let's continue with this nightmare. I understand the appeal of Medicare for all, but folks supporting it should be clear that it means getting rid of Obamacare, and I'm not for that. Biden said in the video announcing his plan. By the way, why can't this is something else I don't get? So that Steyer guy, right? He announced his campaign with the video. I'm pretty sure Sanders announced his campaign with if it wasn't a video, it was, I'm pretty sure it was a video. It was, I know there was an interview he did with this one journalist. Basically, like, what is this pattern with all these candidates? Like, when I think of major big things you want for your campaign, like your national health care plan, you might want to give a press conference explaining, your rationale for having this policy. I don't get this thing of like, oh, today I'm announcing in this thing I recorded 5 weeks ago that I have a healthcare plan. Like, just come out and say it, and divert attention from the Trump crap by getting in front of the people at a podium and saying, when I get elected, I want to do this. We're going to pay for it this way, and it's going to be structured in this manner. They never do that. They just give you a little video and They go, "Ooh, I hope you like it." And to be fair, I would definitely still hate this even if it were in a video. So if he gave the press conference. I know how hard it is to get that passed. I watched it. Starting over makes no sense to me at all, he added. Let's reread that. I understand the appeal of Medicare for all, but folks supporting it should be clear that it means getting rid of Obamacare, and I'm not for that. I know how hard it is to get that passed. I watched it. Starting over makes no sense at all. So you see what he's doing here, right? Because let's be real. This isn't about trying to preserve the ACA. It's about giving in to big pharma and those different insurance companies that helped him get into power. So he's trying to hide the fact that he's a friend of big pharma by getting behind a law and pretending it has like some kind of symbolic, you know, will toward it. I swear. Let's continue with this article. Under Biden's plan, Americans would have the option to purchase a public health insurance option like Medicare. His plan would also increase the value of tax credits to lower premiums aimed at benefiting middle class families. Today, families between 100% and 400% of the federal poverty line may receive a tax credit to reduce how much they pay for insurance. Biden's plan would eliminate the 400% income cap to lower costs for working class families. Biden's plan also seeks to expand coverage to low income Americans in 14 states that have blocked the Affordable Care Act's Medicaid expansion. The plan would offer premium free access to the public option for those eligible for Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act in those states. Again, like it's okay, but it's still, I find myself kind of in this Ferris wheel where I always have to preface what I'm saying by like defending the merit of it. It's like, oh yeah, this plan it's not the worst thing we could ever get, but is it better than single payer slash Medicare for all? Hell no. And he's fully aware of that, which is why he has to try and hide behind the ACA and I, I don't want to get rid of it. It's like that's the point of having a single payer system. You don't These private insurers have no control over the system anymore. They can't jack up the prices just because they feel like it. But for-profit healthcare is being helped out by its favorite whipping boy, so it's all good. Ruben says Biden and Booker team up for a new healthcare plan. What was that? Or do you mean with this? Just want to clarify. The plan would also automatically enroll individuals making below 138% of the federal poverty line through interacting with public schools and other low-income programs such as SNAP. Okay, so if it's below 138%, what's to say of someone that is at 139%? Again, this is so the senator from Ohio, Sherrod Brown, he had a healthcare proposal which basically meant individuals starting at age 55 could buy into Medicaid. And I remember Jimmy did a segment where he was talking about how stupid the plan was because what is so special about that particular number? And he said, if I can buy into it at 55, why can't I buy into it when I'm 54? If I'm 53 and I can buy into it, what can I do with that? And like the point of doing that, even if it might sound kind of played for comedic effect, is to say what causes them to pick and choose basically when to help this group. Because if it's something like, oh, when these veterans go to school, we give them student loan forgiveness. Okay, that's a particular field that is the reason for why they're getting some kind of benefit toward their service. When you start talking about this number here and that number, what is the rationale for doing that? So that's why I said, he's talking about 138%. Are you somehow undeserving if you're at 139? I don't understand the reason for picking that. That's why a lot of these plans just seem like it's someone picking random stuff to decide from. I was kidding. Anyways, a lot of people have forgotten the ACA made healthcare worse for some Americans because they still don't qualify for Medicare, can't afford insurance, and are now getting charged for not having health insurance. If I'm remembering correctly, not to disagree with what you're saying. I could have sworn that the issue here was that even if costs were lowered, you still had high premiums. So it's like that same pyramid scheme thing I was talking about, where they say this is one way, and then it sort of kind of is, but then there's that back door for them to screw you over anyway. That's just what I remember. I've never used the ACA. I just know that we still have 30 million people who don't have health insurance, and these little incremental plans are ain't gonna cut it. Oh, Biden's healthcare plan also includes proposals to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. His plan would repeal the law that bars Medicare from negotiating lower prices with drug corporations. We've actually had several over the course of the last 2 years, and I use that period because that's how long Biden has been out of public office as vice president. We've had multiple bills in Congress to lower drug costs by both Democrats and Republicans. And I don't think he said anything about any of those. Like, what I bring something like that up because one of the things I mentioned about Trump is that when you don't have a record, you're able to say certain things and not really be able to be critiqued for not, representing what you're claiming. So, case in point, you had some people who thought Trump was a non-interventionist because he went around the campaign trail and said at one point, being in Afghanistan was stupid, but also at the same time was talking about bombing some other country. And because he had never been in office, we didn't have a record of whether or not he supported or opposed those particular conflicts. Um, but you had those people who said that because you have no record, it's more of that thing of that unpredictable danger that basically people are talking about. Um, it literally turned out to be the case where, yeah, during the campaign he said one thing of both ideologies, but then you've been getting the same warmonger thing that isn't popular. They did a poll on who wants to go to war with Iran. It's like 4%. It's some really really small number. I mean, those conflicts are hugely unpopular, and it's the same thing with Biden, where he goes around and keeps his mouth shut for 2 years about all these different bills in Congress having to do with lowering drug costs. But I'm supposed to believe he's some great savior that is going to lower the cost with his, brand new spanking healthcare plan. Ruben says, I'm one of those people. Trump pulled an Obama 2008 during his campaign. Oh yeah, I've seen people compare, their respective campaigns for that reason, that they say one thing and they get in office and do the other. There's actually a really good video, if I can find it, where this guy took a bunch of clips of Obama during the first campaign, presidential campaign, and this, like, everything that he said was flipped with what actually happened while he was in office. It's perfect. Like, he was against the surveillance state. He was a pro-union guy. Man, all that stuff went right out the window, and he took the oath of office. That was it. All right. I like this. Limit price increases over the general inflation rate and allow customers to buy prescription drugs from other countries. Now, Ruben, I don't know if you remember, but back in January of 2017, I think maybe a week before Trump took office, there was a bill that Sanders was a sponsor of, where it would lower the cost of U.S. drugs to match that of Canada, where sometimes um, they're literally 4 times less than the U.S. I know that rhymed a little bit, but it was a big deal because it came from a very liberal senator, and it received bipartisan support from conservatives like Cruz and McCain, and only didn't pass because 10 Democrats voted against it. And the top Democrat was Booker, and we've been over his 200,000 from Big Pharma, but whatever. Point is, this part of his proposal, of Biden's proposal, reminds me of that bill, and he said nothing about it. Um, and I guess people like to say that if someone is like, a lawmaker shouldn't have to respond to every single thing that happens. But here's my thing: you're trying to get people to believe you are concerned and care about these issues, But in all of the instances where you've had the chance to speak out on these topics, you completely ignored it. So that's the main thing I'm getting at here, that you had this big bill that literally only didn't pass because Democrats voted it down. And he said nothing. It's just like with Harris and the single payer. Like, you have people who believe she's a progressive and she wants Medicare for all. But then we had a single payer bill out here in Cali, complete silence, like almost a ghost town her office was, if anyone asked her about it. So that's the we just finished the, I think that's the full article. Let me look, make sure, just clarify. Uh, okay, Biden's plan would also end pharmaceutical corporation tax break for advertisement spending. So blah blah blah. Um, Again, okay, but still not anywhere near enough. And it's kind of disturbing the media doesn't talk about the specific number of people who don't have health insurance. They just want to keep on going. Obamacare was such a great law, wonderful law, wonderful law. Oh my God. Now I want to play the Hills, their panel, and I'm going to play this other clip that is kind of related to this topic as well. Turn the volume up on this. Let's see. Ruben says, I remember part of it. I forgot with the other disasters from Congress. Yeah, it's very hard to remember a bunch of bills. Um, that's why I don't really get too upset when regular people don't remember. My thing with Biden is any person who's been in office, especially if they're a member of Congress or, I mean, a president or vice president, is that they have a bunch of staffers, a bunch of advisors, and he's been thinking about running this year or next year, I guess, since he was vice president. So he had people who were his advisors who could have told him about this stuff and had him put out some statement condemning, you know, members of his party for voting against what was really a universally supported proposal otherwise. I mean, again, if you get a majority of Democrats and multiple Republicans to back it, that's not some minor, like left wing, ridiculous, radical idea. But they don't care. He's fine with keeping his mouth shut, and his advisors are fine with keeping him in the dark. So let's play this segment before I say more stuff.
Joe Biden presents his alternative to Medicare for all. Republicans work on their own healthcare plan, and Trump's "go back to where you come from" tweet sets off a firestorm.
Team Rising is here to figure it out. Stephen Cobbs, former Obama administration appointee, previously served as Deputy Attorney General of Virginia, and Daniel Turner is the Executive Director of Power the Future. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Thank you.
So, let's start with the tweets. I'm not really sure where to say. I'll give you both your opportunity to talk about it. I'm going to assume we're all exasperated.
I guess we have to put them up, right?
Yeah. So we have the president tweeting, "So interesting to progressive Democratic congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt, inept anywhere in the world. If they even have."
Can we skip past this? I'm not trying to hear that again. We already dealt with that yesterday. That's old news. That's not a contemporary issue.
Puerto Rico. Also, by the way, part of America.
Now we're getting far afield.
This is not what the tweets are. The president also talk about the Joe Biden healthcare plan.
There we go. Had to skip 4 minutes into that. I'm not going to play that story again.
And this is policy I'd much rather debate here. So Joe Biden, he's released his new healthcare plan. It's essentially a redux of Obamacare, wants to use the market system, bring back the individual mandate. That's the crux of how he believes we can reform healthcare in this country. Stephen, does that go far enough for the Democratic Party today?
So you just heard it from one of the journalists. His idea of reforming healthcare is to have a redux of something from almost 10 years ago. And that's how you fix a societal and continuous issue, by retreading stuff that already didn't fix it to begin with. Only in America.
I think that plan is much closer to the wide range of the support within the caucus and in the party electorate than the Medicaid for all.
Okay.
The Affordable Care Act was passed with wide support within the party. And what we're talking about, or what I believe the vice president is talking about rather, is incremental change and ways to continue to improve and build on that.
Yeah.
And I think people look at that as not only a reasonable path forward, but one that's going to help a lot of people.
So, Dan, before we get you in here, let's hear how the vice president himself tried.
It's like these people live in some kind of fantasy. He's talking about the ACA having widespread party support, but then it's like, so what? I'm sure if they did a vote on Medicare for all, you'd get a lot of people to back it, and then the ones that wouldn't back it would get voted out. He said people will see it as reasonable. Like, guys, it's a right-wing plan. Like, the fact that they see it as reasonable should tell you it's not. This is something that started from the Republicans. And let me answer Ruben's question. So Biden's plan is to make the ACA worse. I don't know if it makes it worse. It makes the current issue of, again, millions of people not having health insurance basically stay in place. Like, this isn't your regular kind of milquetoast incrementalism. This is basically just, let's stop going on this Ferris wheel and just sit in place and hope that retreading something that we've already been doing and has been working will benefit us somehow. As far as the you heard the journalist, the redux of the ACA. And sometimes you get that one person on that panel that actually just they nail what I think so effectively. That other one doesn't know what he's talking about. He's goofy.
Now move.
That's something else. I'm gonna play this again.
Try to sell it.
I believe we have to protect and build on Obamacare. That's why I propose adding a public option to Obamacare as the best way to lower costs and cover everyone. I know how hard it is to get that passed. I watched it. Starting over makes no sense to me at all.
This is truly the moderate case for not going for Medicare for all. He's trying to directly draw a line between himself and the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. Do you think that it'll actually work out for him?
I think someone has to somehow tread the middle ground on moderation when it comes to healthcare. Medicare for all is not a possible thing. It's not a feasible thing. But look, I think he has to own Obamacare. When I was starting my organization, Power the Future, I was job.
So Canada can have, other developed countries can have single payer, but we can't have it because reasons. Okay. Again, every time they say stuff like that, I'm reminded of why. Like, sometimes I really think the U.S. deserves to just crash and burn. Like, beyond healthcare, you've got all these different conflicts going on. You've made the world hate us by bombing these places that have done nothing to us, whether it be in Yemen or Syria. You've got a surveillance state where the government gets copies of all your emails with the Patriot Act. And you've had two presidents keep that same policy in place and crack down on whistleblowers. You've got idiots sitting up here talking about how Trump is the end of modern journalism and attack against freedom of the press. But then the president right before him is the one who signed the Espionage Act and jailed journalists 6 times. Like, they deserve this because they're willing to take reality, take things that are known to be fact, ball it up, and chuck it somewhere else because it doesn't fit their narrative. That stream I did yesterday, I had a guy go in the comment section and literally say that what Trump wrote, he did not write. Israel has public health care and Americans are paying for it. Ruben, that's not feasible. That can't be the case. Also, Ruben, if it is the case, it's only possible in Israel because let me get out my conservative economist that is bought out by Big Pharma to explain to you why that is the case. Let me send Larry Kudlow an email. Hey, and then Ruben, while you're talking to him about like why we need a single payer system or we need at least something that has public option, he's the entire time you're speaking, I'm always going to say is, we're going to put socialism on trial. We're going to put socialism on trial. We're going to put socialism on trial. Socialism on trial. Socialism on trial. Just spamming that word like a like a broken record.
I was unsalaried for almost a year. I was forced on Obamacare. I was paying almost $500 a month, and I had about a $5,000 deductible. And I have no dependents, and I have no illnesses. So if that is the best the Obamacare was going to give someone like me, who would possibly want to continue to support Obamacare? So Biden has to own this, because it is an absolute failure for people like me.
Stephen, here's the problem with what Biden is. Here's one of the problems with what Biden is saying, which is that he says, I remember how hard it was to get Obamacare passed. And so we've got to build on that. Getting a public option passed at this point is no more feasible than actually getting Medicare for all, which is what the Democratic electorate says that they want. I mean, Medicare for all polls incredibly well, not just with liberals, but with moderate and even conservative.
The only reason we can't get it is because all these idiots that are running for president won't run for Congress and actually win back the Senate and increase the majority in the House. Like Hickenlooper, O'Rourke, that one from Montana, Bullock, they should be running for senator because they probably win. But too stupid. And the same thing in the House where, we have or I don't even want to say we because I don't like to affiliate with them, but the Democrats have majority. And the problem is, even if they vote for it, it still might not pass because they have all those conservative dinos sitting up in there that will have to get primaried and thrown out, like Pelosi. Oh, by the way, if any of you if you remember the aftermath of the midterms, there was actually a group of people who were trying to defend Pelosi's right to become speaker a second time. And there was a person who's like, basically anytime you asked them to name any accomplishment she had, they would just keep saying Obamacare, just over and over and over and over again. It was really kind of pathetic because you say to yourself, if someone's in the House for 30 years and they've had, what is this, like 10, 11, 12 different wars occur during the time they've been in office, along with multiple crises relating to different parts of American culture. And the only thing you can bring up is a half measure right-wing Heritage Foundation started healthcare bill as their legacy. I think that's pathetic. That's a trash record. But again, whatever. People they like these clowns, so let's continue.
Conservative Democrats in the primary. So why not this time actually go for the thing that people want, since all of it is going to be incredibly challenging to pull off?
I think it's about creating an infrastructure for the long-term longevity of such a program, and that we want to do these things incrementally in order to work out some of the bugs as it goes into implementing what would be a very...
We have Medicare for all.
Hey, Ruben said Obama Nation. This comment this guy was putting out on this, his name is, what is this, Stephen Cobb or something, but he's like trying to say that by implementing incremental ideas, we can fix the bugs. And so guys, that's, again, if these people get their way, we'll be talking about getting a single payer system for another 30 or 40 years. Like every single time they tell you to do stuff and wait for this. I hate that because they're not looking at gaping issues and saying we need to fix this as soon as possible, since it doesn't affect them. So, that's what that's code word for. Oh, just wait. We'll fix this 2029. Just wait. We're going to put in a new healthcare system. We'll get a little bit closer to Medicare for all, 2039. Just wait. We're going to get that healthcare system that covers everybody. What's that thing called again? Something Medicare, whatever, 2049. Just wait. We're going to get single payer. It's on its way. You think I'm playing? Go back and look at stuff from 10 years ago and tell me that we weren't talking about getting the public option. Actually, I have a video from 10 years ago that specifies that we were, and we still don't have it. Because that's how these people work. They want to get you hopeful that you'll live to see a better tomorrow, and tomorrow turns into the following decade, which turns into the following lifetime because they never get around to actually doing it.
We have Medicare. It works
Right.
well. People like it.
And if you're going to,
So what, what's easier to do than to expand something that's already working?
But if you're going to expand it to tens of millions of people, you don't do that with just a flip of the switch. There's infrastructure that goes into making sure that those payments are processed correctly.
So as a
Ruben, if I don't know if you remember, but during the stream on Saturday, I mentioned there was this one chick that was really, really stupid because she basically said that sanctions are not the same as war. And, I played the Gravel segment. But what he's saying right here, one of the things she said was that the ACA made it more possible to get a single payer system. And I remember getting so annoyed because it's another one of those things where people like to live in a fantasy land. Like, basically, here's the thing. Person like the guy who just spoke right there will say, oh, well, you can't do this at the flip of a switch. Okay, but then how did these other countries get single payer? Did they have to pass 93 bills over the course of 70 years before they could put it through? And I guarantee you, if you ask him how these other places have got their system, they can never explain because they don't know what they're talking about. They're fully framed in U.S. politics, and that shows how just displaced they are from learning about the rest of the world's policies. It's like when Trump's commerce secretary went to Saudi Arabia, and he was like, "Oh, it was so great and peaceful. There were no protests." And then we found that he apparently was not aware that they banned protesting in 2011. So just stuff like that, where when they speak and they talk, it's so plainly obvious they're uninformed and naive.
Public option, a stepping stone to Medicare for all? Is that the case you're making?
I think it's, to use one of Bill Clinton's terms, a laboratory of democracy, to see how that works, to see how the public reacts to it, to see if it is providing the high level of care that people want from it. And then if it is working, then potentially can be expanded further.
To me, what I don't understand is all politics is signaling. So saying I'm going to work in this highly elaborate legislative process to eventually get this. No, that's not what people want to hear. They want to hear, I'm going to get health care. That's it. That's why Medicare for All polls well. Nobody actually thinks that with a Republican Congress that Medicare for All is ever going to pass. It's fantasy. So to me, what I don't understand about Biden's politics, Dan, is why he won't just say, yeah, I believe in Medicare for All. And I'll fight for it because I'm the guy who actually, if anyone was going to get most of it done, it would be me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because he is leading so well in the polls. He's really got a command right now of all the other candidates. So he could come out with something as bold.
I'm telling you, man, those polls are not accurate. I don't care what anybody says. When Cenk did that speech and he was like, I haven't seen a single Biden supporter in Miami or any of these other cities, it's because there's very few of them. It's just high name recognition. So I don't buy it. The point that was made there was really good about if you actually believe in this stuff, like people don't want to hear. Eventually we'll get to so when they say here's single payer, it's going to cover everybody and it's going to do this, it's popular because it explains things. It says screw waiting decade after decade, just look at Broad Vulture. One more chance. Okay, I've seen those kind of people before. They're the same people that say Bernie is working for Russia. Oh man, God, it's almost like you listened in on my conversation with her. There's a bill that was passed in, I think, 2012, the Magnitsky Act. It's some Russia sanctioned crap, whatever. But it was voted against by 4 people. It was Sanders and then both of the Rhode Island senators and somebody else. And she asked me in the middle of us speaking about something that was completely out of left field, why did Sanders vote against Magnitsky? I was like, what the hell is that? Because, it's such a minor, non-big deal thing that nobody would even care. But basically, she believes in her conspiracy theorist, mentally inept head that Putin keeps records of all the Senate votes because apparently he loves doing that. And when Sanders voted against this again in 2012, years before he ran for president, Putin was like, I will now support that presidential candidate. Seriously, this is her theory. And I was like, what a fool. Like who's stupid enough to believe that a head of state for another country just like sat back and did some vote by vote by vote by, because senators, they vote on thousands of bills. Some vote by vote analysis of all of Sanders' positions and was like, yeah, that's my guy. And to make sure he beats Clinton, or I'm gonna help him out. And it's so stupid, man. Oh man, I feel like every time I spoke to her, I lost like 3 brain cells. It was crazy. And I don't know what Broad Vulture meant by his comment. So I'll leave that there. Not even gonna respond to it. That's my revenge against you for not showing up earlier.
Is saying, I'm going to push Medicare for all. I'm going to push some other policy. Someone like Elizabeth Warren, who puts out pretty bold and decisive policy decisions all the time, he could do that. And so the fact that he's not doing it, I think, is interesting.
It's not going to work.
Well, and the incrementalism, I mean, in fairness, I think that's genuine. He is an incrementalist politician. That is core to who he is. So I think it's consistent with who he is. I just personally think it's the wrong approach.
There's someone else that actually put out, I'm going to stop playing it here because now I don't care. But about the incrementalist politicians, someone pointed out that they're incrementalists when it comes to doing domestic things that assist regular people. But when it comes to international issues, they are steadfast and very quick to get involved in some foreign entanglement. I mean, go back and look at Biden's record on Iraq. Did you see him sitting back going, we need to wait 18 months before we can decide whether to launch a war? No, the second it happened, we got to go over there, So, just stuff like that is what is so creepy about these people. Okay, Broad Vulture is over here trying to turn to a rapper. I guess I'll pick up his album later today at Walmart. So this is a video from 2009. Wow, it's got very few views. And it's from CBS. In the description it reads, Joe Biden explains to Harry Smith and what President Obama meant during his speech when he said the public option will not increase the deficit. So I'm playing this because it's healthcare related. It's technically having to do with Biden's record, and I find it entertaining.
Move the debate forward in Congress. Let's ask Vice President Joe Biden. Mr. Vice President, good morning.
Good morning, Harry. How are you?
I'm well. I want to start first with Congressman Joe Wilson shouting out last night, "You're lying."
I remember that.
He apologized later, but does this not illustrate the energy and the enmity of the opposition? Can this really be done in a bipartisan fashion?
Sure it can, because if you notice what also happened immediately, members of his own party denounced what he said and how he demeaned the Congress, and he apologized. So I think the real message here is how quickly the Republican leadership distanced themselves from Congressman's assertion.
You had the best seat in the House. You had a very clear view of most of the Republicans during the speech. There were moments of clear agreement, and there were plenty of other moments when there was absolute silence, if not downright. The body language was very clear. We were going to have none of this. How is this president going to bring both sides together?
Well, the way he's going to bring both sides together is, if you notice where there was overwhelming agreement, there was overwhelming agreement on the need for massive insurance reform. So you could not have companies deny coverage. When you had insurance, you couldn't go bankrupt, which some people do now because they have limits on what coverage you get, and so on and so forth. So you saw overwhelming agreement there. There was another agreement, and I thought it was really telling, Harry. I think what the president did is recenter this debate, because he basically said, look, if you guys who like things the way they are, go ahead, don't participate in this. But all of you who think there's a need for real reform, you got to get in the game. And I think after the August recess and after all the misrepresentations about death panels and we're going to give insurance to.
I'll tell you why I'm smiling, because when you watch this stuff retroactively, after an entire presidency has taken place, and for fact that what he just said about, because they asked him, how's the president going to bring both parties together to support legislation? and he answered, and just like to know that that didn't happen. Remember, this is 2009, so this is before the ACA was either. I know it wasn't signed along until 2010, but I don't think it was voted on at that point either. So you're talking about a law that people love so much now, these centrist and third way and all these other groups that receive literally no Republican support at all. And you can go back and look on C-SPAN at those clips of those politicians Republicans talking about the ACA. They said the exact same things about it that they say about single payer now. Too radical, socialist, the Bolshevik, all these different Red Scare terms that mean you can take them, ball them together, and throw them out. They have nothing to do with actually addressing the substantive issue of millions of Americans not having health insurance, 30 million. It's just to make people freaked out and scared and go, oh my God, the socialist takeover of my health care. Yeah, Ruben, Cuba and Venezuela. When I turn on my TV, Castro, this is before he died, Castro and Maduro are going to be sitting together playing hopscotch in the White House. Oh. Who hurt what? Is that one of the singles on the album? Who Hurt You? It's really funny. Like, I've read some of the comments people write on Twitter, which is why I don't. That site is so toxic and gross. I actually kind of forgot about it when I was off of there before I started using another account. When you do the voice impressions, it's funny. Oh, well, let me do the Obama one. Well, I thank you for the the fact that you would say such a nice, wonderful thing about me, and in exchange, I'll give you a crappy right wing health insurance plan that my former vice president will try to rehash 10 years later and say that it somehow is new. Oh, look at Dirk showing up. I don't know what Broad Vulture is laughing at. He needs to go take that silliness to the to SNL. Biden care, just don't get sick. Yeah, that's going to basically be all of the healthcare. Dude, could you imagine if it's like 2028 and Sanders, let's say, actually wins this election? And again, I'm saying that because I think the DNC is, they're plotting something. But if he wins this election, then we're talking about these other candidates. They're like, here's Harris care, there's O'Rourke care, there's Booker care, there's Gillibrand care, and then every single proposal is like one piece of paper, and it says, just don't get sick. And then like they actually get healthcare advisors that go on TV and they're like, you gotta look at Harris care, man. This proposal says just don't get sick. It's brilliant. Like they'll really try to distort reality to that level by that point. It's like, leave big pharma in place, just don't get sick. Ruben says, well, at least Obama danced with Ellen. Man, look what good it did him. Man, I think, didn't she get, I could have sworn he gave her some kind of reward, like a medal. And it was really weird because I can't think of a single thing she's done to actually, like, be seen as a person who's a big deal. I know she brought George W. on there about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, just so she could, like, lick his, we can't use that word here, but, basically just sit back and shower him with praise and ask him about his family and all this other stuff that means nothing to actually being in office. Let's see. Dirk says, let me try the public option. Oh, Republicans say no. Let's do the official mandate, or vice versa. You can keep your private insurance. LOL. I can just picture, like, as Biden is writing his advisors writing this speech, just like just giggling and cracking up. So that's probably an accurate depiction of what went down. Dirk managed to like read right into their souls. He can tell us what specifically was said on their part and how they decided to speak and talk about things. I wish I could get a on a side note. I want to get one of those files, the one that Secular Talk uses, where it's Biden with like the ridiculously huge hands, and he always uses that picture for him on the thumbnails and for the not the thumbnails, but when he does a segment that is related to him, he'll put it like on the screen right behind him. I wish I could do that. I just think it would be funny. Stick his picture there. Handy Joseph. And then the screwed up part is if he actually had positions that were worth the damn, I wouldn't even care about his hands. But, we're going to mock him over everything. It's just like with Trump where, during that election cycle, I used to tell people don't call him orange, don't talk about his weight. Man, after I read the stuff that was written to me this year, last year, and the year before last, I don't care what anybody calls anybody because, you could just get on. I had a guy yesterday like type out. It was like he was losing his mind, man. He wrote like 2 or 3 paragraphs in the comments. Like, I'm not reading that. I read the first sentence, the last one, that was it. No one has time to sit there, and especially if it's something gross. It's like, what's the point? When can someone finally? I thought they already did. That woman in Las Vegas. Remember, I think her last name was Flores, and she was because she endorsed Sanders for president in the previous election cycle. They tried to say that Sanders set her up to do it. That like Bernie got her in a little room, and he was like, "Okay, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna take this accusation, this Me Too thing, and you're gonna go and accuse my top competitor, and then they'll believe you because vagina, and then he'll be out of the race, and when I get in the White House, I'll make you my side piece. Education secretary. Yeah." Again, these conspiracy theories. Like, what's funny is the same people who believe that are the same people who called me and others who think that the primary got rigged against Sanders conspiracy theorists. So, with proof. Whatever, man. Hey, I don't know if brought Vulture is still here, but did you like that Bernie impression? Got her in a little room and gave her a plan of how to bring Biden down. Alyssa Milano is a Biden fangirl. Yeah, she's got the same problem that someone like Sean King has, where it's like, okay, you talk about how much you like Sanders or some kind of idea, but then you're gonna go and do that establishment bootlick. And like I remember Sean, right after O'Rourke got in the race, was like, "Oh my God, what a wonderful addition to the cast of the." I was like, "What? Ugh, you didn't miss it, bro, Vulture. You just don't want to admit that it was spot on." I hope Ruben didn't miss it. I hope he didn't. That was me answering his question. That would be the ultimate disrespect. So we'll find out shortly if he saw it or not. I'll be so disappointed. I'll weep for days. I really was out of topics to discuss, and then I was like, "Oh, well, it's supposed to be some major healthcare plan from the Democratic frontrunner, so we might as well discuss it." I'm trying to remember what time was it in the earlier election where. Oh man, so we might actually get stuck with. I was like trying to think of when the earliest we could see Biden getting out, but then like I was comparing him to Jeb, but I remember that Jeb didn't leave until right after. It was like I think he lost, South Carolina, and then that's when he got out. So we're gonna be stuck with him for a while, especially since people got in so early. It sucks. This is 19 minutes ago. Let's see this. Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Monday urged House Democrats to support a resolution to condemn President Trump for tweeting. Let's see. Okay, so she's trying to like do some more grants and stuff. Why don't you oppose him by opposing his policies? Like I'm so sick of this war of words thing. That's why yesterday I was warning that AOC and those other progressive Democrats that he was talking about, they should have just kept quiet. They should have not said anything for the weekend. And then when they got back, they're like, hey, this is a statement by the president. He's making me a bigger person by talking about me so much. Thank you. And that would have been the end of it. Because, like, you know, this is my point, that whether you're in office or whether you're part of some kind of statement thing like me, where you just go on and you do a stream, more often than not, someone is going to type out some big, huge thing to you. And whatever you respond with, you get nothing out of it. Like, when I first turned off my notifications for comments, it was because when I did the video on Trump pulling out of Syria, or rather rescinding that he was going to pull out of Syria, where he said he was going to do it, then he flipped. This guy left me like 2, 3, 4 paragraphs of stuff, you know, like kind of halfway against my position, halfway kind of seeming curious about what I was into. I said, you know, let me give him the opportunity to just talk. So I wrote back to him, and then he started calling me a zombie, and you know, I want welfare over stuff. You know, no, I didn't say any of that in my response to him. So when I look at something like that, it's purposely designed to where you can't win if you respond to them, because they respond back with nonsense, right? Which is what Trump's tweet was. But you also basically are wasting your time even saying anything to them. That's why I said just ignore them. Or if you have to give a statement, if you're, you know, in a position where you're forced to, make it very brief. It's just like when we were talking about the immigration stuff. I wouldn't sit up here and like give all these speeches and, oh my God, I condemn this. I would just say, here's my position. That's it. Like, no kind of, so I have no problem doing that with these different conflicts or healthcare or the NSA stuff, because there's a lot of specifics that need to be addressed having to do with them that you can talk about without people losing their minds. Like, just from yesterday, you saw a guy lose his mind in the comment section over something that somebody else said. Let's see. Ruben says almost everything Trump and his top followers say on Twitter is just a distraction. Yeah, but it's working on a lot of these people. Like, AOC wrote out a whole 2 paragraphs to him in response to what he said to her or what he wrote to her. It's like, for what? Like, what did that accomplish? We already know who she is. You know, we already know who Omar is. So what exactly did she get out of writing back to me like, we're fighting you? Like, we know that. So what exactly was what was gained? I'm just saying that objectionably rather. You actually the person yesterday who was talking about how much they didn't like her, and that's kind of my point, that I can contend with people having a disagreement of position. It's just when you have to sit here and like want to argue back and forth, like, I don't have time for that, because you get nothing out of it other than the person trying to name call you, and I can get that from walking down the street, so I'm good. Or any further comments, concerns, questions, theories, possibilities, speculations, or dilemmas? Anything? An entire college. Okay, Ruben says an entire college level essay that translates to just orange man bad. Dirk says Bernie and his camp needs to help these new Justice Democrats. Well, I told you, Dirk, what it is that, like, if I was Sanders and I was in his position, I would feel kind of backstabbed, because remember, only 2 members of the House have endorsed him presently in his presidential campaign. It's Roe, and it's that Welch guy from Vermont. So every single one of these Justice Democrats that was talked about yesterday by Trump, completely silent in supporting him, in indicating any kind of endorsement. You might say to yourself, oh, well, they're probably going to endorse him because, that's the guy that, like, is kind of the figure that started their group. But again, why haven't they done it already? He's been running now for 4 months. So what exactly, or not 4 months, almost 5 months, because the 19th will be the 5th month. I don't know why the news talks about, I don't know why the news never talks about Kana either. Yeah, it's really weird. Well, I have 2 theories. One is that they're so caught up in their AOC coverage that they completely ignore all the other members of the House other than Pelosi. And he's not a woman. I mean, think about it. I've said before, I think he has plenty of different legislative accomplishments and, very much involved with things that are going on, but you can only do so much of that stuff before they just completely ignore you. Like AOC, to my knowledge, still only has one bill that she actually spearheaded, the Green New Deal. Kana has, let's see, he's Yemen, he's got the Amazon thing, he's got the pharmaceuticals, he's got just all over the place, man. Cameras stay on AOC and Nancy. Get the only two. Well, that's why I uploaded his that speech he gave, or that C-SPAN appearance he had, if you remember, Dirk. I can upload more of his stuff that has been featured in other places. I'm just saying that, I'm trying to do my part to get his thing across as well, because I really think he is, like, people want to sit up here and talk about how AOC is the future, man. Kana's where it's at. Because we haven't really heard AOC talk about international issues like at all. If you've noticed that, like it's always Green New Deal, immigration, and hell, it's mostly just immigration at this point. That's all I hear her talk about. Like that speech she gave that went viral on C-SPAN, that was about the government shutdown, which was a direct result of Trump's immigration policy. So it's always immigration or maybe a little bit of climate stuff, but it's never like there's no benching out on her part. And I'm really sick of that. It's really aggravating. Where did Ruben go? He just disappeared. He must have taken a bet, some kind of. Oh, did you see Bernie's anti-endorsement list? Do you think it about bring boycotts? I'm glad Ruben's still here. I'm so disappointed he didn't go into the Discord after I set that up and waited all night for him to show up. I was so disillusioned. Let's see, being against CEOs of huge companies. I love that list. I love it. It's like we're finally getting some trolling on the good team. Like some, they're getting our opponents are getting mocked for a change. It's usually the other way around. So that was a nice little development. It was a little side story. Let's see. It's the best, Dirk says. I'm reading the message like a little book. It's like, it's the best, Dirk said, typing into his computer and sending the message with the enter key. I guess so. Dude, Dirk, you remember when you said, I asked you, I think it was back in January, when is Sanders going to get in? And you were like, not for another 4 months. Do you remember that? And it was really funny because, like, in the grand scheme of things, it was actually really, really early on, but it seemed like forever because at that point, I'm pretty sure every person that is not Biden was in there, like to some extent. Okay, then boom, next month he announces, yeah, I believed you because I didn't think they were going to announce as early as they're doing now, since I had set up in my head that they were going to start in March because Cruz, and he was the first major candidate from either party to announce. It was back in March of 2015. And I was like, okay, well, it's probably going to be in that first few months. But when they started announcing in January, and I was like, wow, they're jumping in here. Like Biden actually announced, I think, maybe a week or two. So his bid currently was announced around the same time as Sanders' previous presidential campaign in April of the year before the election. And it's funny because that seemed like so early back then, and now because it took him 3 months to get in, as opposed to other people, it seems so late. Just based off of the traction of people getting in and whatnot. Then boom, next month he announces. All right, so I think we were. Also, I apologize for the error of yesterday with the stuff acting up. I don't know what happened. I think that might have been an error with the site because my connection is usually pretty good. So, yes, and Biden is slipping. The more he talks, can I get I'm gonna send it again, Dirk. We'll keep on sending this. I hope you finally join. I hope you don't keep me in suspense. Okay. Oh well, Dirk. That same woman I was saying that like thinks of the Magnitsky Act as like this big indicator of when Sanders was suddenly picked by Putin. I told her that Biden was going to start slipping because of stupid stuff he would say in his public appearances that were higher publicized, like debates or speeches. And I was saying I can't wait until the debates start because that's when I thought it would happen. And she still said her answer was, "I think he will slip up, but I don't think people will stop supporting him over it." And guess what happened during the first debate? Huge uptake for the person that got him, and then he's doing this, just plummet, plummet, plummet. It's like I hate that people pretend like I don't have any kind of political instincts. It's really kind of frustrating to have followed this stuff for 6 years regularly and have people pretend like they don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, Dirk, you're the I'm not going to say your name on there because I don't want to expose you. Yeah, I intend on posting some more stuff in there. I just have to. I don't know. It's hard to think of things to put in there because when you only have a few people, nobody wants to really speak. It's harder to try and have their account. I'm the. Yeah, I know York is I got the notification. I'm just saying that I didn't want to say it because I want to respect your privacy and your wishes and your well-being. And I know how invasive people can be online, so I'd like to not be part of that system. That kind of thing. So that's the rationale for that. Oh, let me read Ruben's comment. I'm treating him like trash. I feel so horrible. There is a guy on Twitter that has the track records of all the billionaires that have donated to the Democrat candidates. Wow. Also, Ruben, I was going to respond to something you said yesterday. When it comes to, I think you mentioned Klobuchar, and it was really funny because I remember her like the main thing she brags about is I'm the member of the Senate who passed the most bills into law. And then if you look at the stuff that she passed in the law, it's like milk toast, milk toast, milk toast, milk toast. Like it's really minor stuff, things that like that's why she was able to pass so much stuff. Like it's nothing. It's nothing. It is centrist, love Republicans, minor crap all day long. That's hilarious. She has really turned it into a bragging right. God, if I had my wish, Omar would run against her for her seat. But these Democrats, even the justice ones, don't believe in actively opposing members of their own party because they're all trying to get elected over and over again. The perpetual cycle of cowardice and staying in place continues. So, anybody got anything left to say, or can we conclude this? Any more comments? Things to add in there? I guess we're at the. I could mention the fact that throughout the week I'll be putting up the different segments from that stream, the one that I did on Saturday, and it's really funny to just kind of sit there and know that a lot of this stuff, when you give it a certain title, like the same content, right, it'll get way more views just because of its title. I find that really entertaining. Just like that's why I said it doesn't matter the quality of the content; it's always related to the title. Like people will see a title and they'll just go, "Ooh." But yeah, thank you for checking us out. Hopefully, we'll be able to do this again. If not during this week, definitely on Saturday. You know the drill. I appreciate those who attended, and I hope that Ruben will join the Discord before I get angry and make a song about it. See you later.